Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha Kudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Those Lousy Husbandmen. And this lesson came through the inspiration of a scripture I was reading earlier, through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Racha Kudash, which is the Most High, in the name of His Son Yahushai, in the name of the Holy Spirit, the Racha Kudash. The Most High's name is Yahweh, His Son's name is Yahushai, and the Holy Spirit is Racha Kudash, which is Spirit Holy. And what you see before you pretty much is just a picture that somebody made. And it says, what is a husbandman in the Bible? And then you see the field. Nice field, nicely kept. You know, you got your crops growing. Everything seems to be in order. Beautiful. But then you have, behind it, you have more land that's being cultivated, for more crops. So on and so forth. Now, the truth and the people of the Lord, the Israelites, are compared to crops. They're compared to trees and vines and things of that nature. And at the end of this age, of Esau's age, of his rulership, you will have something called the harvest, which is the end of the world. And this is when the Lord is coming to gather the elect into barns, into baskets, which the baskets represent the chariots. The elect represent the fruit. And those are the fruits that have been carefully cultivated and watched over and watered, so on and so forth, by the true husbandmen of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. But then you have those lousy husbandmen that are doing a bad job. Their field is more so like a desert. Their crops are terrible, and they are not doing a very good job. And those that are doing the job of the husbandmen, the right husbandmen, the true shepherds, they give them a hard way to go. They hate him that rebuketh at the gate. They give him a hard way to go. And they will not allow anyone to be set up and established and do the work of the Lord above them, even though they're lousy husbandmen. Even though the spiritual man is mad, they still will not allow the true husbandmen to do their job unhindered. The spiritual man is mad, on the left-hand side. And if they had the power to do it, they would actually kill the true husbandmen, the true prophets, as they have done many times in the past. And pretty much this lesson came through the inspiration of a scripture I was reading earlier. And the scripture is in Luke, the 20th chapter, and it's called the parable of the vine growers. You can find this also in the book of Matthew 21, 33 to 46, and Mark 12, 1 through 12. All right. When you go to different gospels, they may be written slightly different, or certain ones might have a little more detail, but it's pretty much the same message in each one of them. So Luke 20:9, it says, Then began he to speak to the people this parable. So this is Yahushua speaking to the people, to the Israelites, a parable. Now a parable is like a riddle. It uses different allegories, different, signs and symbolisms to tell a particular story. Usually you're telling a story in the form of a riddle. And the word is parabole, which means a placing of one thing by the side of another, juxtaposition as of ships in battle, meaning parallel. So you're telling a story using other parallels that are reflective or referring to something else. It says a comparison of one thing with another, likeness, similitude, right? In this case, husbandmen, right, to the workers in the field of the Lord. An example by which a doctrine or precept is illustrated, right? A narrative fictitious but agreeable to the laws and usages of human life, by which either the duties of men or the things of the Most High, particularly the nature and history of the Most High's kingdom, are figuratively portrayed, right? Because when you're reading these scriptures, as Elder Apostle Gabar always says, you have to be able to picture what you're reading, and this is why Yahweh Shai, in telling his parables, he always used things that were easy to understand, whether it was a leaf, a branch, a tree, grass, water, sun, moon, stars, the skies, the clouds, weather, and fig tree. He used very simple things to explain or to tell these parables. Words easy to be understood. It says a parable, an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. This is a very good one. A pithy, an instructive saying. I've looked this word before, but I don't really remember. It's got to be like a short story or something like that. So many things you look up and it's impossible to remember everything. Of language or style, concise and forcefully expressive. Of a fruit or plant containing much pith. Of language or style, concise and forcefully expressive. Right, so it's like putting together, words to express something else. So it's like a riddle or a short story using different similitudes. A pithy and instructive saying involving some likeness or comparison and having perceptive or admonitory force, right? And this is what when Yahweh Shai would speak about these parables, it was a form of admonition using these different symbols, reflecting either good or bad. Those that were doing the right thing and those that were doing bad. An aphorism, a maxim, a proverb, an act by which one exposes himself or his possessions to danger, a venture, a risk. And that's going into something else. So pretty much it's a similitude. That's what a parable is, a riddle, so you could understand. So it goes on to say, then began he to speak to the people of this parable. A certain man planted a vineyard. Who is this man? This is Yahweh Shai, right? Under the orders of the Most High. And what is the vineyard? The vineyard is the house of Israel, which let's get that real quick. Isaiah chapter 5, we're just going to go straight to the point. You can read from verse 1. The point is in verse 7. It says, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plant, right? Because Judah is the head tribe. The Most High himself is of the tribe of Judah. If he was to come down here in person, this is why when he sent his son down, which is his only begotten son or his firstborn, he came where? Through the tribe of Judah, And I know some people are going to be like, well, how can you say the Most High is of the tribe of Judah? Well, you got to search the scriptures to find out. And if anybody wants to know, I'll put the scripture. If somebody asked, then I'll just go to the precept and show you why I said what I said. It's biblical, not personal. It says, and he looked for judgment, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. So in this vineyard, which represents the nation of Israel, there was oppression, there was no judgment, there was, no righteousness, but a cry. Why? Because the people are in a bad predicament, in a bad situation, howling, crying, in a low state, poor, so on and so forth. All right, so going back. So a certain man planted a vineyard. Yahweh Shai planted this vineyard, the house of Israel, and led it forth to husbandmen. Right? It says, and went into a far country for a long time. Now, what is this far country that Yahushua went into? He went into the spirit world. This is why it says that our conversation or our citizenship is in heaven. That's why the Apostle Paul also said to, look for the things up in the heavens where Yahushua is. I'm just merely paraphrasing. And so he said he went into a far country for a long time. For us, it's been a long time. It's 2,000 years. For the Most High, Yahushua, the angels, has only been 2 days. Because in the heavens, the time frame in the heavens is totally different than the time frame on the earth. Time moves slower on earth than it does in the heavens. Just curious, let's see what it says for far country. Let's see if it's one word or if it's two words. Far country, one word, okay. Apodemeho. To go away into foreign parts, go abroad, right? And where was this far country or this far journey? It was in the heavens. Yep, it just pretty much just means taking a far journey. All right, so it says for a long time. It says, and at the season he sent a servant to the husbandmen. Who are the servants? The prophets. Let's go and prove that. Let's go to the book of Amos, chapter 3, and verse 7. It says, surely the Lord power will do nothing, but he revealeth his what? His secret unto his what? Servants, the prophets. So who were the servants that were sent to the husbandmen? The prophets. Who are the husbandmen? Those wicked Pharisees and Sadducees, the ones that were supposed to be keeping watch, cultivating, working with, keeping an eye on the crops, which the crops are the other Israelites, the sheep. This is why Yahushua told Peter, lovest thou me? He said, well, feed my sheep and feed my lambs, because sheep and lambs, they go astray easily. So you have to keep a constant watch on them. I'm going to read a couple of these precepts that brothers put up. This is a good one. 2 Peter 3 and 8. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day, which just proves that the Most High's time is different from our time. The Most High's name is Yahweh. In case somebody gets stupid, so you guys say Most High. Yeah, but we give the Most High's name also, Yahweh. Proverbs 15:24, the way of life is above to the wise. Beautiful, beautiful precept. The way of life is above to the wise, meaning what? Their mind is settled in heaven. Like it says in Philippians 3, I believe that's either 20 or, I think it's 20, where it says that when it says that our conversation is up in heaven, when you go to the word conversation, it doubles down as citizenship. Our citizenship is in heaven. Why? Because although our bodies are physically here, our minds are in the heavens, constantly meditating, on the Lord, wondering how he feels about us. Are we doing the right thing? Constantly meditating for, new lessons, hoping the Lord give us the inspiration for the next lesson, for the lesson after that, and the lesson after that, and just in general, looking for the deliverance and the destruction of this place, the deliverance of the elect and the destruction of this place, that he may depart from hell beneath, meaning from this hellified state that we're in on the earth. All right, because the Lord said that he's a power or a God of the living, not of the dead. All right, that's a beautiful precept. Revelation 3:21, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne. Right, and this is why our mind and meditation should be up in the heavens. All right. And you brothers are, man, you lighten up the comment board. Okay, so let's move on. And at the season, he sent a servant to the husbandman. So what does it mean at the season? It means at the time appropriate, because you have, you plant, or should I say you break up your fallow ground, which you have, your land is all fucked up, right? Like that. So now your job is what? To break this fallow ground up. Matter of fact, let's just look up what the word fallow ground means. Fallow ground definition, and we could come back. Let's go to all. What is meant by fallow ground? It says, usually cultivated land that is allowed to lie idle during the growing season. Right, because Yahweh Shai already said, let's go, before we hit anything else, let's go here. Let's go to the book of, matter of fact, we could do the quick nav. Let's go to St. John chapter 4. And we're going to go straight to the point. Matter of fact, I can't skip it. I can't skip it. I wanted to skip right to the point, but I can't do it. St. John 4:34. Yahweh Shai saith unto them, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his what? His work. To finish that work that was given to him. Yep, ergon. Now, it says, say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Right. What is the harvest? That's the end of the world, or the time to pluck, to the ingathering time. It says, behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields. What are the fields? The world. The field represents the world. You have the Israelites out there in the world. It's time to harvest and to the ingathering of the fruits that have grown within that cultivation period. But you have some guys that are sleeping, the little folding of their hands. They got drool in the side of their mouth. They got, that cold in their eyes, from that long sleep that they've been in. It says, for they are white already to harvest, because this is when they're fully ripe, when they're white. Elder Pastor went into when you were able to, grab up the wheat, for lack of better words, it was white. That's how you knew it was ready. And he that reapeth receiveth wages. Right. If you reap, or if you put in work, you will receive the wages, which is what? The wages are the reward for doing the work of the Lord. And that reward is what? Ultimately, the kingdom of heaven. And on the journey to the kingdom of heaven, the different spiritual gifts that the Lord will give to each brother, and gathereth fruit unto life eternal, because that's what we want to do. We want to build up and continuously build our spiritual bank account. It says that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. Why? Because it's a joint, effort. And this is the point. And herein is that saying true: one soweth and another reapeth. I sent you to reap that wherein you bestowed no labor. So basically, with the disciples later became apostles on down to us, we were sent to reap or to work where we didn't put any labor in, because the labor was already set up. The work was already made. Work was already laid. All we had to do was keep an eye out on it. The right husbandman and the wrong husbandman were supposed to keep an eye out. Now, the wrong husbandman or the lousy husbandman didn't do that, but the right husbandman did. And this is why when we have fallow ground, it says, usually cultivated land that is allowed to lie idle during the growing season, right? So it's time to break up that ground that was already worked. Because the lousy husbandman left it idle, left it untilled, didn't put any work in that ground to be able to, to have, fruit. All right. So going back, it says, other men labored and you are entered into their labors. Correct. So the men that started the work, we have to finish the work. And we have to leave it in the pristine, way that it was left. This is pristine. This, you could see, when you look at this, you could see that, unless this is, if this is a real picture, this is pristine, a pristine state. And you could tell that whoever did this had a passion for making sure that these things were done properly. Everything is uniform. Everything is beautiful. It's kept correctly. The weeds have been brought out. The seeds have been planted correctly. The fallow ground was broken up. If there was any stones or anything in the way, they were removed out of the way prior to the planting of the seeds. Because you have something called the furrow, which I thought for years that a furrow was where you put the seeds. But the furrow is actually where you would put the water for the irrigation of the seeds. So you have a furrow and you have something called a ridge. A ridge is the part that comes up like a small little hill. Have something here. These trenches are the furrows. The part that sticks up, these are the ridges. As you can see here, these are ridges, and this is the furrow. And as you can see here, this is another illustration. This is the furrow, this is the ridge. And the crops would be where? On the ridge. The furrows were set up for what? For the irrigation or the water, so that it can penetrate into the ground and get up under where the roots would get the benefit of that water. All right. And this is the job. See, like him, he's a husbandman. He's working. He's doing this thing right. And this is what the men of the Lord are supposed to be doing, making sure that these crops are constantly being fed, because we were given the job to watch over them. All right. Now, I was looking up here, Hosea 10, which some brother just put that up. But I was looking up here in Hosea 10, and there was something that caught my eye, which we're going to get. Hosea 10:9, O Israel, thou hast sinned from the days of Gibeah. There they stood, the battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. It says, it is in my desire that I should chastise them. And this is why we went through what we went through. It's a form of chastisement, or not a form, it's chastisement. And the people shall be gathered against them, and the nations came against us. When they shall bind themselves in their what? 2 furrows. Now, why did it say 2 furrows? Because the nation was split into 2. Now, as we showed you that the furrow is the irrigation where the water comes through to water the crops, to make sure that they're healthy. Now, when you look up the word furrows in the Hebrew, here you have Lashathaya Ayan Thumb, which is this is plural. Now, when you look up the word Ayan Thumb or furrows, in the singular form is Ayan, but in this scripture is Ayan Thumb, because you had 2 furrows. Because you had both of the kingdoms coming together as one, the house of David, to bring forth and water these crops, right? Now, when you look up the word ayan, that means eye, a physical eye, showing mental qualities of mental and spiritual faculties, spring, fountain, because the job of the real husbandman is to work in the field eye to eye, so that they can keep an eye on the crops, make sure they're growing properly, correctly, while they're watering. Because when you go to the book of 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, and 6th verse, it says, I have planted, Apollos watered. So it was a combination. So the two kingdoms coming back together, there are those that are seeing eye to eye to be able to be the right husbandmen, to constantly water these flocks. But the Most High gave the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one. See? Because they come together as one for one purpose. And that's to what? To make sure that these crops are watered, properly nurtured. And every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. That's why he said, if you don't reap, you don't sow. Or if you don't sow, you don't reap. So going back, let's read that again. It is in my desire that I should chastise them, and the people shall be gathered against them, when they shall bind themselves in their two furrows. So the nations are going to come against us, and we see that happening. Psalms the 83rd chapter. And Ephraim is as an heifer that is taught, right? Because you had the heifer, you had ox, that would tear up, that would break up the ground. You would use the yoke. They would be yoked up, and they would pull, right now my memory escapes me, but they would pull the behind them that would break up the ground. It says, and loveth to tread out the corn, but I passed over upon her fair neck, and I will make Ephraim to ride. Judah shall plow, and Jacob shall break his clods. Now let's look up that word clods. Let's see what comes up when we look up the word clods. Not clouds. Clods of soil. Boom. See? It's soil that's all jacked up. Why? Because it's been neglected. And just like we saw the fallow ground, which was left idle, it was just destitute. You still had the appearance of the ridges and of the trenches, but it was unkept. And this is what Yahushua was cursing out those wicked, lousy husbandmen about. So this is the clods of soil that are not broken up. Clods of soil. Let's go to definition, because we need some definitions. Here. A lump or mass, especially of earth or clay, soil, earth. And then we saw what? We saw an example of it. And that has to be broken up. So when the two kingdoms come together, their job is to break up those clods. Matter of fact, let's see what it says for clods here. Because you can't grow good crops and stuff like that. It has to be broken up and set up properly. Shaddad, to harrow. Harrow a field. Right. Break up the clods. Let's look up the word harrow. What harrow means. A cultivating tool set with spikes, teeth, or discs, and used primarily for breaking up and smoothing the soil. All right. So now you know. And this is a combination of the men that are out there teaching the word, the real husbandmen that are doing this in the field. The field is the world. This is why you have camps all over the world. Sow to yourselves in righteousness, reap in mercy. Break up your fallow ground. Right, that ground that has been left idle by those lousy husbandmen. For it is time to seek the Lord. Why? Because the Lord is going to cause the increase to come in the form of the understanding, which is what? The fruit of righteousness. Till he come and rain righteousness upon you, right? Because there's a constant showering. Yahushua said, he that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. And these men, these true husbandmen that are seeing eye to eye, an example, Furrows, will be able to water and constantly nourish these crops by these teachings. You have plowed wickedness, you have reaped iniquity, you have eaten the fruit of lies, because thou didst trust in thy way in the multitude of thy mighty men. Right, so therefore, these are the wicked husbandmen, the lousy husbandmen, and they're going to be cut off eventually. All right, so let's go back to Luke 20. So it says, and at the season, 20 and 10, and at the season, he sent a servant to the husbandmen. The season of what? Of starting to make sure that the crops were watered properly, that they should give him of the fruit of the vineyard, right? Because the Lord wants, a return when he comes back. He wants every man out there that was given this knowledge to come to him with a basket full of fruit. Depending on how much was given, how much money was given to each individual spiritually, that's what he wants in return. It says, that's a bad precept, bruv. I'm gonna go into English. Ecclesiastes 7:3, my son, sow not upon the furrows of unrighteousness, and thou shalt not reap them sevenfold, right? Because eventually there's going to be an inquiry into these things. But the husbandman beat him and sent him away empty. This is why Yahweh said, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, in so many words. And again he sent another servant, which is more prophets, and they beat him also and entreated him shamefully and sent him away empty, right? Because he came to gather the fruit, but they didn't give him nothing. Because their job is not to cultivate, keep the fruit, keep the sheep. Their job is to scatter them. He that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad. And in most cases, these individuals would be in a position of authority, like they were during the time of Yahushua. You had many wicked Israelites in authority that did not want their positions threatened by anyone else that they felt were beneath them. And this is why they killed the prophets. And again he sent a third, and they wounded him also and cast him out. Then said the Lord of the vineyard, what shall I do? I will send my beloved son, which is who? Yahushua. It may be they will reverence him when they see him. Right? But when the husbandmen saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, this is the heir. And they knew that Yahushua was the Son of the Most High. But they loved their positions too much to give it up. Come, let us kill him, that the inheritance may be ours. You see? And this is why they took counsel together. And if I'm not mistaken, in is that Luke? No, St. John 11. I believe when they gathered together to kill Yahushua, that was because Yahushua had just risen Lazarus from the grave. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's it. Because I just read that recently. So when they wanted to do away with Yahushua, when they had that council, when Caiaphas, the high priest, cursed them out at first, but then he turned and he was one of the main hands that put Yahushua on the cross, one of the main voices. But prior to that, he had raised Lazarus from the dead. They knew he was dead. He was in the grave 4 days, and then he went and rose him up, and people saw that great miracle, and many people believed on him. That's why the Pharisees and them said, look, man, if we leave this man alone, he gonna cause problems for us. They're going to come and take us away. Matter of fact, I'm going to read it right here. St. John 11:48. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. You see? Because they didn't want to give up that position. They wanted that inheritance to be theirs, because you have to remember, see, these weren't no dime store preachers. making peanuts off of the congregation. And these individuals was getting pizzayed. All right? They were getting pizzayed. They were living good. They were living off of the backs of Israel. So they were living very, 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 very good. So they did not want to give up that lofty position, because that meant they would have to lower their standards and go back down to where they came up from, depending on what walk they came from. So they cast them out of the vineyard, meaning Yahushua. So what was the vineyard? The vineyard is the Israelites, and the main place of the Most High's that the Most High adores is what? Jerusalem. So what did they do to Yahushua? Yahushua was, he carried the cross. Stephen, what was his name? The Cyrenian. I don't remember if his name was Stephen also. He helped carry the cross, and they brought him outside of the walls of Jerusalem, because that's where you would, sacrifice, in certain cases, So they brought him outside of Jerusalem. So they cast him out of the vineyard, out of the most precious part of the vineyard that the Most High loves, and killed him. See? At the place of the skull, or Golgotha. Simeon, Tawada, brother, Tawada, Simeon. It was Simeon, not Stephen. Simeon, or Simeon or Simon the Cyrenian, which the Cyrenians, you had a lot of Israelites in Cyrene, which is in northern Africa. And if I'm not mistaken, in Acts the 6th chapter, it speaks about those Cyrenians also, right? Simon. Yep, Simon, Simeon, same thing. It says, and killed him. What therefore shall the Lord of the vineyard do unto them? Right. What is the Most High Yahweh going to do unto them for killing the heir? Did not they say, let his blood be upon them and their children? Yep. Meaning affliction heard. That's right. That's right. And he carried that cross for Yahushua. Matthew 27:32. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. Right. And you had a big community of Israelites in northern Africa, which was called Cyrene or Cyrenians. A lot of them would come to the Passover, So it goes on to say, he shall come and destroy these husbandmen, the lousy husbandmen, and shall give the vineyard to others, true husbandmen that are going to keep everything correct. See, because you have to keep a careful eye on that vineyard. And when they heard it, they said, the Most High forbid. And then this is when Yahushua came back, when they said that, because they knew that Yahushua was speaking about them, that they were going to be destroyed. That's what they said, the Most High forbid. Then he came back, he said, and he beheld them and said, what is this then that is written? The stone which the builders rejected. The same has become the head of the corner, man. Yahushua. See, you can understand why, they wanted to kill Yahushua, because the words that he spoke to them hit harder than steel. And remember, the words of the Most High are sharper than any two-edged sword, and a double-edged sword, man. It says, whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. So when Yahushua comes back, he's coming to grind these clowns, these lousy husbandmen, into powder. Meaning he's going to zap them with them lasers from the chariots. They're going to be ashes. All right? So now, let's go back to the book of Isaiah 5, because that's a bad chapter. Isaiah 5:1. Now will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. This is Jerusalem. It's Israel in general, but the most precious of those lands is Jerusalem. And he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof. Right. This is the breaking up the fallow grounds, making sure the furrows are tight, you know. It says, and planted it with the choicest vine, meaning the top vines. And this is why it says in Jeremiah 2. Damn, I just got rid. Oh, I just go back. Jeremiah 2 and 21. Just gonna go straight to the point. Yet I had planted thee a noble vine, wholly a right seed, the whole nation. How then art thou turned into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me? How did you become foreign? How did you become foreign? How did you become a Yankee boy, you know? So it says, how art thou turned into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me? Right? How did you become a heathen, a foreigner? It says, and he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof and planted it with the choicest vine and built a tower in the midst of it and also made a wine press therein. Right. And what is the tower? The tower are the prophets, you know, the teachers, the men, to watch over it, you know, to keep it. It says, and he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. And this is one of the scriptures that could be used as well as the other one in Jeremiah 2, where you could use this for Romans the 11th chapter, you know, about the wild olive tree. You know, they became wild when you understand the history. They became wild because they were led away from the path, you know, of the truth. And they were mingled among the heathen and learned the heathen's ways and became unclean. And they had to be cleaned back up. And this is why the Lord sent Peter to speak to convert Cornelius, which was an Israelite. And he wasn't from the famous Corneli family because there was no Corneli family. And then he sent the Apostle Paul to continue in that ministry, to bring back those, you know, foreign grapes, those wild grapes, those wild, you know, olives, and bring them back to the commonwealth of Israel, which belonged to them anyways. It says, and now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. Right. So the Most High is asking, Yahweh was asking to judge between him and his vineyard. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Right. He did everything. This is why it was pristine, as you see this here. So if this is an actual picture, whoever did this, this is pristine. You could tell that, of course, he didn't do it by himself, but you could tell that he takes very great care, with very great passion for having his crops look this way. And you know that this field right here that is being worked on is going to be just as this field here, because that person is very passionate about what they do. And to be a husbandman, an actual farmer, you have to be passionate about what you do. Because there's days you're going to get up, you're not going to want to get out of bed, you know, because you probably get up out of bed maybe like 4:30 in the morning to get ready, make your coffee, whatever you make, and then, you know, eat your, you know, food, your breakfast, whatever, and then get ready for a hard days in the field. All right. So going back to Isaiah, it says, wherefore when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes. And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, right? The protection. Why? Because the vineyard went left. The scriptures say that the angels of the Lord encamp around them that fear him. But when they go left, he takes the hedge off. And it shall be eaten up, this is by the nations, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down. That's why it says Jerusalem shall be Israel shall be amongst the nation as a vessel wherein is no pleasure. So this is why the Lord had to bring us back. He had to send men to bring us back to his pleasurable ways, the things that are pleasing in his sight. And I will lay it waste, it shall not be pruned. And this is why it became what? A fallow ground. This is why it became clods. This is why it became untilled, because it was left idle. Nor digged, see? But there shall come up briars and thorns. And this is what came up. So these wild grapes, these wild olives, these were the briars and thorns that were unrecognizable. So much so that they were compared to the heathens. So they had to be brought back out of that filthy state and cleaned up. And that was done through what? Through the word. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it, right? Because it has to be constantly nourished. As you see this field right here. Pristine. Right? Then it goes on to say, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plan. And he looked for judgment, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. Right? And that's what happened. So that leads us to Romans 11 chapter, which we're just going to go straight to the point. You know, this chapter here is the whole, when you read the whole chapter, is dealing with certain of the Jews that didn't believe, that were blinded, and that were severed away from the truth so that the Israelite foreigners could find mercy to come back into it. And the Apostle Paul was saying that the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, which the word world here is cosmos, which is an organization. And the reconciling is to be brought back into the good graces, or back to being friends with the Most High Yahweh. And how was that done? By his son, Yahushai. So it says, for if the first fruit be holy, which is what? That's Yahushai, that's the tribe of Judah, that's the lump of Israel. The lump is also holy because the whole nation is holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches, because the branches, what happened, were broken off, that the Israelite foreigners can be brought into that. And when we go to, I believe that's Jeremiah 11. And about the 16th verse, it says, the Lord called thy name a green olive tree, fair and of goodly fruit. With the noise of a great tumult, he hath kindled fire upon it. Why? Because they pissed him off. And the branches of it were broken off. For the Lord of hosts that planted thee hath pronounced evil against thee. For the evil of the house of Israel and of the house of Judah, which they have done against themselves to provoke me to anger. And what? Offering incense unto Baal, them goddamn idols. That's what caused the falling away of these Israelites. So going back, it says, and if some of the branches be broken off, meaning the natural branches that were already there in the land of Jerusalem, that knew that they were Israel, in the land of Israel, period, and thou being what? A wild olive tree. How did you become wild? Because you were left uncultivated. The Lord had took his hedge from you. So you were let out there without any instructions. So you became wild. Were grafted in among them. Meaning you were brought back, you were grafted in like you graft another tree into a particular tree by breaking off some of the branches. There's a whole way that you graft these things in. And when you go to the word grafted or graft, right? Grafted in or graft, same thing. The word there is enkentrizo. The word enkentrizo is to cut into for the sake of inserting a what? A scion. To inoculate and graft in. When you look up the word scion is a young shoot or twig of a plant, especially one cut for grafting or rooting. But it also means a descendant of a notable family, because you were of a notable family, but you became wild. So now you have to be grafted back in order to put off that wildness of yours so that you can come back to your proper commonwealth, so to speak, and be cleaned from all your filthiness and impurities that you had. Hence, you're being brought back or reconciled back to the fold where you belong. This is similar, Sion, this is similar to when the Apostle Peter told Cornelius that you know that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company of one of another nation, which when you go to the word another nation means another tribe, aluphalos, which are other Israelites that fell away because the Jews in Jerusalem, they never had any interaction with the nations except, with the Romans when they had to pay whatever. But as far as bringing them into the fold, they never had that. So when it speaks about them being brought back, meaning those Israelites that fell away, who the Jews in Jerusalem, which kept the ways or their nationality, had a disdain and an utter hatred for those Israelite foreigners because they sold out, going all the way back during the time of the Greek Empire, the Hellenistic period. And they understood and knew that whole history. And you have to know that history in order to understand the Gentiles in the New Testament whom salvation was given to, which were Israelite foreigners. All right? So it goes on to say, and if some of the branches were broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, you were sioned back in, because you are Israelites, but you had to be reconciled, as we read in the few verses above that. And with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches. But if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee, right? Because you went off, and you had to be brought back. So you can't boast against them, because the same way that you were brought in, that same mercy is going to be extended to them. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. And thou standest by what? By faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For if the Most High spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Right, because you were given mercy through Yahushai. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of the Most High. The goodness to who? To the Israelite foreigners, and severity to the ones that knew that they were Israelites. On them which fell, severity, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, because you had to stay the course, so to speak. Otherwise thou also shalt be cut off. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for the Most High is able to graft them in again, just like he grafted you in again. For if thou wert cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? See? Because you had to take off that demonic disguise that you had on. Them heathenistic aprons. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits. Yeah, because this happened because it was the purpose of the Most High. That blindness in part has happened to Israel, the ones that knew that they were Israelites, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, meaning unto the Israelite foreigners were brought in, because there were a certain number of them among the heathens that became wild, that they had to be cleaned up because they were also a part of the elect. It's very easy, but if you don't understand that history, you'll be lost. And so all Israel shall be saved when what? When the Israelite foreigners be come in. All Israel shall be saved. So this is not talking about the other nations. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall what? Turn away ungodliness from Jacob. The nations were never given the law, statutes, and commandments. Ungodliness is the breaking of these laws, the transgression of the laws. It says, for this is my covenant unto them when I shall take away their sins. And what is sin? the breaking of the law, transgression of the law. The law was never given to them other nations. All right. So these lousy husbandmen that are not doing their job, the Lord is going to remove them. He's going to remove their candlestick, and burn them up, because they're pretty much a waste of space right now, but they are necessary because that is a part of the scriptures. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.